Welcome to Happy Wolf Art and episode 5 of Artistic Choices. This week we're looking at Peyo, the Smurfs, and specifically the Smurf Menace, that story. If you haven't seen these paper cut books, they're really great collecting 3-in-1, and highly recommend them if you like the Smurfs. Also, there's a great documentary on Peyo online if you're interested in the development of the Smurfs, the history, how it came about. But I just want to look at a couple things in this story, just to point out. And again, these artistic choices are just me sort of thinking about art, sort of taking notes for myself and for the benefit of others as they create art for themselves. So what I wanted to look at initially was the silhouetting use for the Smurfs' houses. So generally speaking, I was looking through the story trying to find a pattern, if there was a pattern. And here in this panel, you can see that the second house is silhouetted, and that rule generally holds true, although not always. So you can see this panel down here. We have a second house and it's not in silhouette. But I found that Peyo will often use the silhouetted house in the background to emphasize a certain character or a character's response. There isn't always consistency in this, and I don't know if he's making deliberate choices that way, but I was just trying to find patterns that he holds to. Here we have some silhouetted Smurf houses in the back, sort of framing this conversation. Here also, sort of highlighting that response again here. Papa Smurf thinking. Lack of detail in the background can focus the viewer's eye on the particular character. Here we have 3 people interacting and just one silhouetted Smurf, there's probably multiple Smurf houses there in the background. But pretty interesting. So as you read the Smurfs, look at these, see if you can find a pattern. But these are all tools that we can use to help frame our characters, to focus the viewer's eyes on what's going on in the story and the action. And one thing that I always really appreciated about Peyo's artwork and loved about it is everything feels so, just so real, have such depth and weight to it. So you look at this table, huge chunks of wood. Everything has real weight. This pedestal, the chest, you feel the weight of the metal there. You feel the wood, you can see the cracks and the details. It's not overly rendered in the sense of hyper detail and a lot of cross hatching, but everything feels very weighty in Peyo's work. So let me flip through, and I apologize for the movement of the camera. I'm traveling right now, and I'm in my car. So one thing that he does regarding those silhouettes, whenever you have a type of establishing shot, so here they're coming up on what's called the gray Smurf village, he doesn't use the silhouettes for the houses. They're generally, most always in detail. And again, it's establishing sort of an environment, so he's giving the viewer information. Once you're in the environment, he does go back to these silhouetted forms. And if you notice, these are always purple. And I have found one exception to that, at least in this story, they're purple. And it's sort of interesting how the color is changed. So here's another sort of shot. It's not an establishing shot, but it's showing a greater context of this village. And there is one silhouetted house here, but the other ones in the background are in detail because he's showing a larger environment. I'm always interested in these type of poses when you have hands and legs and body parts going up and down and around, how artists depict that. So you can see that these lines cross over other lines. You have speed lines, you have sweat, and so forth. So those are interesting also. Alright, so a couple other things I wanted to point out, and then we'll conclude this video. Here's a couple other sort of silhouetting type of background use of these silhouetted houses. One thing I noticed also in this story is, generally speaking, the Smurfs' hats do not change shape. Occasionally he'll use them, he'll bend them and morph them depending on what's going on. Usually it's for some reaction. So here he's getting uppercut, so the hat is actually feeling the brunt of that and whipping back. Also, if you look at the Smurfs or the Smurfettes, they have multiple lines in their hats, and this is consistent throughout the story, whereas a normal Smurf hat has this single line here. So these are all details that artists use to sort of depict their character or characters, part of a language, artistic language, if you will. And a couple other things here. Here's an example of sort of the hat morphing, changing shape based on some reaction here. I think this is Brainy Smurf. His hat is dangled. They sort of punched him and threw him up in a tree. So the hat is very expressive also, depending on the situation. All right, two more things that are of interest. And let's see here. All right, so the layering as far as foreground, background, middle ground, Peyo does this frequently. It's a very useful tool. You can see Papa Smurf is on this foreground layer. You have a middle ground where these two are running. You have a further background. You see that here. And for this part of the story, for some reason, a lot of this layering comes into effect. You can see on this shot a lot of heavy layering. And of course, the composition directs your eye also back and forth across the panel. So that's significant. In creating our own pieces, we want to consider those foregrounds, middle grounds, backgrounds. Creates for more interesting composition, and yeah, and it directs the viewer's eyes. So let's see. So I missed the one silhouetted house, and I'm going to flip back through just briefly to find that. And the reason why the silhouetted house was not in purple was there was a line missing, and in the coloring stage you can tell that the artist who is doing the coloring was probably dropping color and dropping color into this stage. Let's see. Well, I'm not finding it now, but so what it is the artist was dropping color into the background. There was not a line to stop the brush differentiating from the house. And so the brush color, oh, here it is. Okay, I found it. So there's the brush background. There is no line. You can see where the brush stops right here and the house continues. And so it looks like green was dropped in, and it just colored this entire back panel. And if there would have been a line here, then this probably would have been purple, and that would have been green. Perhaps it's an artistic choice also, just to stay consistent and to highlight more what's going on here as far as the celebration. But that was one instance where I saw these silhouetted houses were not purple. Anyways, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Check out the Smurfs. Peyo is great. He's one of the best, one of my favorite cartoonists. So, all right, thanks for joining.